In working with dozens and really even hundreds of applicants, I can tell you my main piece of advice is really focus on, and I think a problem I see is a lot of applicants treat it more. And if you do that consistently, your application is going to stand out light years ahead of someone else who just filled out the basics. Welcome back, Nav. On this quick episode of Chats with Dylan Nav, we're giving a primer on the med school application process, something Dr. Ghaffari and I, Dr. Cahill here, have a lot of experience in as graduates of Harvard Medical School. We collectively served over 200 applicants in application editing and advising, interview prep, a lot of wisdom to share. We're going to try to give you some quick pearls on the whole process each. So let's start with the primary application. What are you looking for there, Navid?
Okay, perfect. Let's just first mention what the components are.
Sure.
The primary application, it's going to have your personal statement. It's going to have your basic just information that includes your courses. It's going to have your extracurriculars, which some people might just think are just saying what you've done, but I sort of treat them as like mini personal statements because you have an opportunity to write about what you've done. Your letters of recommendation, which also has a lot that goes into it. Those are like the key. And of course, your GP and MCAT are then part of it. But at that point, that's sort of fixed. So those are the key components. I'll turn it back to you if you have any specific things for how to optimize that as much as possible.
Yeah, in working with dozens and really even hundreds of applicants, I can tell you my main piece of advice is really focus on impact in those application essays. Treat all of them as an opportunity to express the value you bring as an applicant and win over the admissions committee. And I think a problem I see is a lot of applicants treat it more like they're filling out a job application where they're just listing activities. You joined a lab, pipetted here and there, and assisted with something. And you can do so much better than that, even with the same story. Start with why you joined the lab and why was that personally meaningful to you? What did you accomplish, help the lab achieve? What unique contributions did you make? And what are your main takeaways from that? And even in like a short paragraph, 700 characters, you really do, if you're thoughtful about it, have the opportunity to communicate all that. And if you do that consistently, your application is going to stand out light years ahead of someone else who just filled out the basics. So that's my tip. We got the whole primary application in. Ideally, we submitted it on time. Our application's looking good. Now I'm drowning in secondaries. So what do you have to recommend for someone moving on to that second stage?
You got it. So once, as Dylan said, you send your primary application, the next step are the secondaries, and this is where individual schools will then, you have to go on their separate portals, and typically you fill out some more basic information, but what really makes them noteworthy is that you then have specific essays for them. They can range in their number, range in the types of questions, but suffice it to say, you're going to have a lot of writing to do and a lot of questions that you're going to have. My biggest piece of advice for at the secondary stage is just pre-write. There's a gap in time between the primary and the secondary, and the more that you can just at least jot some notes down, turn those notes into paragraphs, or even have like a polished essay ready to go, because a lot of these questions are the same from year to year, is going to save you a lot of time, and it will allow you to submit your secondary sooner, which looks good. As much as speed is appreciated, it should not be at the expense of quality, but if your quality is there and you can get the speed up, I mean, that's the ideal.
Right. To piggyback off that, to stay on top of it, especially when you start getting, your first one trickles in, the next day you hit 3, then the next day 5 applications come in, you're trying to get them all back on time, is stay organized. This is something that you could even do in a simple Excel spreadsheet. I, in fact, even put one together. If someone reaches out, I'm happy to share even my template on that. All the schools you have that applied to, when your application was complete or if anything's missing, and then things like when you got their secondary application and when you've submitted it, so you don't lose track of the dates and things like that. You can even, another piece of organization is to think way ahead, is you could actually use a dedicated email just for this purpose of the med school application process and secondaries. That way you have a separate inbox that's like everyone is high priority, anything coming into that, so you don't miss anything. Because I have heard of applicants missing, it's in their junk folder for like 2 weeks or a month, and that can be just devastating when that's one of your main opportunities to earn an acceptance this cycle. So stay organized and stay on top of it. Try to get those in early. Everything else I said too about still taking your time and adding value in those essays definitely still counts at this stage. Not a time to get lazy, even though you will probably feel burnt out. Now, I've survived the secondaries, submitted the last one, and I'm ready to take a break, but wow, an interview just came in. So what do I now need to know? What's special about the med school interview, or just general things to keep in mind?
Well, first you celebrate the interview because this is a long process, and there's going to be a number of rejections along the way, no matter how good of an applicant you are. So you take the wins when you you can get them. So an interview, you feel good about it, you share with family and friends, and then you get down to business. You got to be able to answer the common questions of, why medicine, tell me about yourself, and be able to really articulate what your experiences have been. And if anything, this is a verbal medium for what, Dylan, you were describing about, like, why did you get involved with something? What did you do? Which you still have to say, of course, like what you did do, even though that can be a bit dry, but just keeping that really concise. And then importantly, getting to what you were saying about the impact, the reflection, showing that you're really have certain output and that you're also reflecting on what that means and how you think that it's also relevant to being a physician. Like, what are the transferable skills? If it was in research, like, why would something you didn't research make you a good physician? Just being ready to handle that, I think, are big points.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually think I have a framework that I think about this. I've had the pleasure of interviewing a lot of students and mock interviews on the Fiverr platform. And some of them have even come back to me after their interview saying, thanks so much, that the kind of tips made it feel so much more natural when they went in and they felt a lot more confident. And one of those pieces of advice that I give almost universally is this kind of analogy of offense versus defense to think about the interview. And that is, I think a lot of people approach the interview like they're on defense, like they're getting questions coming in and they're just trying to give a appropriate answer to move on to the next and move on to the next. But I think that can be fine. And, you can come across as polished and ready. But what you really want is to have a little bit more of an offensive mindset coming in, knowing what is the strength of my application. And that's going to be different for every person. And it's going to require some reflection. So for example, if you have a really heavy research background, that's got to come up in the interview. You have to find the opportunity to talk about that. Otherwise, you're just going to come across as dry and weak, and they're never really going to see, what makes you excited and what you've spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours working on. And for some, maybe it's something like a unique extracurricular you have, that you're captain of the dance team and that you do some form of ethnic dancing that you're very proud of, relates to your culture. Have those on the ready so that when they ask a question that you could work that into, like a general question about a meaningful extracurricular, that you're ready to talk about that, because then that's that offensive mindset where you actually can take charge of the interview without over controlling, without throwing the interviewer off track, just knowing that you're there to show who you are and make a statement, and that you're not leaving with any regrets, feeling like you left something on the table or they didn't really get to hear everything about you, which is, I think, a common feeling in the interviews. So that comes with preparation. It comes with knowing yourself. It comes with putting together a thoughtful application in your primary and secondary. And then the interview is really just the last piece to keep showing them that you are that awesome person that they already invited for the interview.
That's awesome. Trying to hit as many of these points in a short amount of time, but we hope that was helpful to get a great overview of this primary application, the secondary, and the interview. There's certainly a lot more specifics for each of those, and it's, as Dylan was saying, very tailored to the individual. Definitely wish everyone the best of luck, and stay tuned for some future episodes on some more specifics for each of those.
Thanks, Nav. Talk soon.
Sounds good.